Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
For over a year, my life had been a constant stream of interruptions. Scam callers disrupted every important moment of my day, from work meetings to quiet moments with friends. They would call 10 to 15 times daily, each time using a different spoofed US-based phone number to trick me into thinking it was a legitimate call. And they always left the exact same voicemail. Every time it was someone claiming to be Jennifer from the senior underwriting team calling about my loan. I had to clear out my entire voicemail inbox 3 times a week just to manage the flood of identical messages. I tried blocking numbers, but since they used different ones each time, it was useless. I work in a field that requires me to be available by phone, so I couldn't just ignore calls from unknown numbers. Every time my phone rang during an important meeting, I'd feel my blood pressure rise. Was it a client I needed to speak with? Or just Jennifer again? After months of this torture, I was scrolling through Reddit one night and found a post about this exact scam. Someone in the comments claimed they had turned the tables by scam calling the scammers back, repeatedly, until they gave up. It sounded ridiculous, but I was desperate enough to try anything. On Thursday morning, I decided to fight back. I took their most recent number and started calling them. When they answered, I immediately put myself on mute and just listened for a few seconds before hanging up. Then I called again, and again, and again. Within 35 minutes, I had called them exactly 266 times. During this barrage, I cycled through what must have been their entire call center. I heard accents ranging from Australian to Indian to Mid-Atlantic. They claimed to be from at least 3 different companies, and they used numerous different scripts. Some of the calls went like this. I remained silent on mute while a call center employee introduced himself as David from Financial Solutions and started talking about my outstanding debt. I hung up before he could finish and immediately called back. On the next call, a different employee answered with a greeting from Premier Lending and asked how they could help me. Again, I hung up and called right back. Another employee started to introduce herself as Sarah from Credit Services before stumbling and correcting herself to say she was from Financial Recovery Solutions instead. The best part was when they'd mess up and change the company name mid-script, or when they'd somehow know my name despite me never saying a word. In one call, an employee simply said hello and then asked if I was there, using my last name even though I hadn't spoken. After about 150 calls, I started noticing they'd hang up on me as soon as they answered. I knew I was getting to them. Their frustration was becoming obvious, which only made me want to continue. Then, around call 260, I reached who I can only describe as the final boss of the operation. When he answered, his voice was deep and menacing, like a movie mobster. He told me that I needed to stop with the spam calls and suggested that I must have something better to do with my time. I almost laughed at the irony. After a year of them spam calling me, they were telling me to stop. I hung up without saying a word, feeling a strange sense of triumph. Since that Thursday, I haven't received a single call from them. Not one. After enduring over a year of constant harassment, 35 minutes of turning the tables was all it took to make them back off. My phone hasn't rung with a spoofed number for days now. My voicemail inbox remains free of Jennifer from the senior underwriting team. Work meetings proceed without interruption. Moments with friends remain unbroken. Sometimes the only way to deal with persistent harassers is to give them a taste of their own medicine. In this case, 266 tastes of it was exactly the right prescription. They wanted to waste my time, so I decided to waste theirs, and in much more concentrated fashion. I don't know if they've given up permanently or if they've just moved me to some kind of do not call list because I became more trouble than I was worth. Either way, the peace and quiet is worth the 35 minutes I spent repeatedly dialing their number. If you're dealing with relentless scam calls that block and filters can't stop, sometimes you have to get creative. Fighting fire with fire isn't always the answer, but in this case, it worked perfectly. I ended up in court as a witness after a car accident 3 years ago left me paralyzed from the waist down. The first year was hard, learning to navigate from a wheelchair, adapting my apartment, and adjusting to a new way of life. By the time this happened, I was used to my new normal. Most people are decent, offering help when needed, or just treating me like anyone else. But some see my wheelchair and take offense to my existence. It was Friday evening when I decided to have dinner at Bella's, this Italian place downtown I wanted to try. They have a policy where people with disabilities can skip the typical hour-long wait on busy nights. I don't usually use this, but I was tired that day after physical therapy. When I rolled up to the hostess stand, she greeted me with a smile. She asked if I had a reservation. I told her I didn't, but asked about their accessibility seating policy. She said they could seat me right away and asked me to follow her. As she guided me to an empty table, I heard someone huff behind me. I didn't think much of it until I saw a woman walking up to me, looking angry. Her husband followed, looking embarrassed. The woman asked who I thought I was to roll in and get seated immediately when her family had been waiting for 45 minutes. I tried to explain the restaurant's accessibility policy, but she stopped me. She said she knew about their special treatment policy and called it ridiculous. She asked why I should eat before her family just because I was in a chair. Her husband tried to get her to go back to the waiting area, but she wouldn't. She said she worked all day and her feet hurt. She said if anyone deserved to sit down right away, it was her. The manager came over. He told the woman to lower her voice and go back to the waiting area. She said no, this was discrimination against normal people. Then she grabbed my water glass and dumped it in my lap, saying now I had a real reason to need special treatment. The restaurant went quiet. The manager called security, who was an off-duty police officer. When he came, several people had recorded what happened on their phones. Even though she said I provoked her, the officer arrested her for assault. I didn't want to press charges at first, but after thinking about how she might treat other disabled people, I decided it was right. The court date came 3 months later. I was nervous when I told what happened. When it was her turn to speak, I expected some regret. Instead, she got worse. She told the court that disabled people get everything handed to them, special parking, special bathrooms, and special treatment everywhere. She said we contribute nothing to society but expect normal people to do everything for us. Her lawyer looked like he wanted to hide. The judge watched without expression as she talked. She said disabled people shouldn't be allowed in public spaces for productive members of society. She asked why her taxes should pay for ramps and elevators, and said disabled people should stay home if we can't function like everyone else. The judge asked if she was done. She said yes, adding that she was saying what everyone thinks. The judge said before giving his verdict, he wanted to share something. He moved his chair back from the bench, showing he was in a wheelchair. The judge told her he had used his wheelchair for 10 years after a spinal injury. He had handled over 2,000 cases and contributes to society as a complete human being who happens to have a disability. The woman went pale. The judge said her attack wasn't just physical, but against the dignity of myself and all disabled people. Her statement showed this was a hate crime, not a mistake. Instead of community service and a fine, she got 90 days in jail, a year of probation, diversity training, and 200 hours of community service at a center for people with disabilities. When I left, the woman's husband came up to me. He said sorry for what happened and hoped I knew not everyone thinks that way. I told him I know most people are good. Some just need to remember that wheelchairs come with people in them. When I went down the ramp outside the courthouse, I smiled at the irony. She never expected a judge in a wheelchair, but justice rolls in when least expected. I've never been one to share stories like this, but something happened at my late partner's workplace that was too perfect not to tell. It belongs in a collection of stories about entitled people. My partner worked as a bartender at this trendy modern bar downtown. It wasn't your typical dark pub. It had huge windows, served fancy craft beers and Indian pale ales, and was family friendly. They even had a small toy box in the corner for kids to play with while their parents enjoyed their drinks. And in that toy box was this bright blue plastic kazoo. My partner told me about this Sunday shift. The place had just opened around noon, and this couple with their daughter, probably around 5 years old, were among the first customers. The little girl immediately went for the toy box and found the kazoo. From that moment on, it was like someone had unleashed a tiny tornado with a soundtrack. The kid blew into that kazoo nonstop, making that awful buzzing noise that only kazoos can make. You know the sound, that irritating bzzzt, bzzzt, that feels like it's drilling into your brain. The parents found the table furthest away from the bar, out on the terrace. Convenient for them, but everyone else still had to suffer through the constant kazoo noises. My partner said it was driving everyone crazy. Other customers were giving annoyed looks. Some were even asking when the concert would end. A customer asked my partner if there was any way to make the kazoo noise stop. My partner offered to speak with the parents about taking a break from the kazoo. The customer said they had come for a relaxing Sunday drink, not what they called the kazoo symphony. My partner went to the parents and asked if their daughter could take a short break from the kazoo, explaining that some customers found it distracting. The mother said her daughter was just having fun and that kids will be kids. The father added that they were sitting outside so she could play and wasn't bothering anyone. When my partner told them that the sound was carrying throughout the entire bar area, the mother said they were paying customers too and that her daughter would eventually get bored of the kazoo. But she didn't get bored, not for the entire afternoon, not through lunch, not through the couple ordering another round, and another. The kazoo symphony continued for nearly 8 hours straight. The worst part was that the parents barely paid any attention to their child the whole time. They were busy with their own conversation, their phones, anything but their kid. They ordered food for themselves, but didn't even get anything for their daughter. My partner even brought her a free juice, which they barely noticed. When evening came around, the bar was getting busier. Around 8 p.m., the parents suddenly seemed to remember they had a child. They gathered their things, collected their daughter, and the father tossed the kazoo back into the toy box as they headed toward the exit. My partner watched them leave and had a moment of inspired pettiness. My partner grabbed the kazoo, wiped it down with sanitizer, and rushed after them. They had just reached their car in the parking lot when my partner caught up. My partner called out to them, saying their daughter had forgotten something. The parents turned around, looking confused. With a big smile, my partner told them that since the girl seemed to love the kazoo so much, it would be a shame for her to lose her favorite toy. The little girl grabbed the kazoo and immediately put it to her mouth, making that familiar, irritating buzzing sound. The mother said this was so thoughtful, but her face showed horror. The father also thanked my partner awkwardly for the gesture. They both clearly realized what was about to happen. A car ride home with non-stop kazoo music, and probably many more days of it at their house. As they drove away, the little girl happily tooting her kazoo in the back seat, my partner walked back into the bar with a big grin. Several customers who had seen the whole thing burst into applause. One customer told my partner that what they did was brilliant. The rest of the shift was peaceful by comparison. When my partner told this story, we'd laugh about those parents driving home, probably regretting every life choice that led them to that kazoo-filled car ride. Working as an accountant at a firm downtown means I deal with enough stress during the day, so when I'm commuting I try to keep calm. But what I witnessed on my drive home today was both infuriating and satisfying. It had been a long Monday. 3 client meetings back to back, followed by a surprise audit preparation session that kept me at the office until almost 6:30 p.m. All I wanted was to get home, kick off my shoes, and relax with some takeout and television. The route I take home is nothing special. A 2-lane road that winds through a residential area before hitting the highway. 1 lane going each direction with a few stoplights and a school zone about halfway through. Usually, it's a peaceful drive. Today was different. I ended up behind this massive sport utility vehicle, which was riding the bumper of a white work van. The van had some landscaping company's logo and phone number plastered all over it. The driver of the van was just minding his business, going exactly the speed limit. Not too slow, not too fast, just following the rules. But that wasn't good enough for the sport utility vehicle driver. She started weaving within our lane, moving from one side to the other like a snake, trying to find some opening that didn't exist. Her frustration was visible even from my car. Every few seconds, she'd honk her horn, a short angry blast that echoed down the street. Then she started yelling. She rolled down her window and started screaming at the van driver. I couldn't make out every word, but the message was clear. She wanted him to speed up or get out of her way. When that didn't work, she gave him the middle finger. I looked at my dashboard clock. It was only adding maybe 2 or 3 minutes to our drive time. What could possibly be so important? When we approached the school zone, the yellow lights started flashing, indicating we needed to slow down to 20 miles per hour. The van driver reduced his speed. That's when she lost it. Without warning, the sport utility vehicle swerved into the oncoming lane. Thankfully, there was no traffic coming the other way at that moment. She floored it, engine roaring as she illegally passed the work van in a school zone with the lights flashing. What she failed to notice in her rage was the police car parked on the side of the road, partially hidden by a large oak tree. The moment she completed her reckless pass and pulled back into our lane, the police car's lights came on. At first, she didn't seem to realize what was happening. She continued driving for a few seconds before the police car pulled out and got behind her. Under my breath, I muttered to myself how this was going to be good. When she finally noticed the flashing lights in her rearview mirror, she started gesturing wildly, pointing ahead at the work van as if to say the police should be after the van driver, not her. The police officer wasn't having any of it. The siren gave a quick whoop and finally she pulled over to the shoulder. As I drove past, I could see her getting out of her sport utility vehicle, still ranting and pointing at the van that was now well ahead of us. The officer stood with his ticket book already in hand. I couldn't help myself. I slowed down just a bit, rolled down my window, and gave the officer a friendly wave. Then I looked at the woman and smiled before continuing on my way. I could see the officer asking her for her license and registration. The woman was trying to defend herself, complaining about the van going too slow and how she was going to be late picking up her daughter. She kept insisting it wasn't fair. The officer told her that she had crossed a double yellow line in a school zone while speeding and repeated his request for her documents. I couldn't hear the rest of their conversation as I drove away, but the image of her standing there, finally facing the results of her dangerous behavior, gave me a sense of satisfaction. The work van and I continued on our separate ways at the next intersection. The driver gave me a little nod as he turned left, and I went right. A small moment of solidarity between two rule-following drivers. When I finally got home, I felt lighter somehow. Yes, my day had been long and stressful, but witnessing someone face immediate results for such entitled behavior was refreshing. I poured myself a glass of wine and settled onto my couch, replaying the moment in my mind. That woman thought the rules of the road, rules designed to keep everyone safe, especially children, didn't apply to her. Her time was apparently more valuable than safety or common courtesy. But today, karma had other plans. As I scrolled through my phone to order dinner, I found myself smiling again. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.